Welcome to The Drum. I'm Steve Cannane. Coming up, the world shame. Just days before they vote on who gets the World Cup, FIFA executives accused of taking bribes. Can Cancun deliver where Copenhagen failed? The latest UN climate change talks begin in Mexico. And why is Hillary Clinton concerned about the medication some world leaders are on? Our panel tonight, Jessica Brown from the Centre for Independent Studies, Peter Lewis from Essential Media, and Tim Palmer from the 7:30 Report. Well, you probably wouldn't want to be in the shoes of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange tonight. The US has launched a criminal investigation into the latest dump of more than 250,000 diplomatic cables, revealing classified and, in some cases, embarrassing details of American foreign policy. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is not impressed.
This disclosure is not just an attack on America's foreign policy interests. It is an attack on the international community, the alliances and partnerships, the conversations and negotiations that safeguard global security and advance economic prosperity. I am confident that the partnerships that the Obama administration has worked so hard to build will withstand this challenge.
The Australian government is also investigating the leaks, and it may ask the media not to publish sensitive documents in the future. The Attorney General Robert McClellan has also suggested that Julian Assange could face jail time if he entered Australia. Tim, it's not just gossip in these cables. There's some really interesting stuff in particular that's been revealed today about North Korea.
Yes, certainly the Korean Peninsula, and it's timely, of course. The Vice Foreign Minister from South Korea has reported in one of the wires as having met two senior Chinese officials who voiced their disillusionment with North Korea and stated that Beijing was starting to fall away from support of North Korea, that it was seen as a failed economy and would probably be a failed polity as well once the dear leader dies, that he wouldn't be able to maintain the succession that he'd planned, and that as a result China may not necessarily support North Korea in that sort of political change period.
And that they might support reunification.
They may support reunification, and they described it as reunification under Seoul's government. So that's fairly dramatic. Of course, there's a couple of things you can note about this. This is the South Koreans expressing it in United States cables. So you could say they would say that, wouldn't they? It might be a line fed to them. Another thing you might say is I doubt very much this is being reported in China's media, and you'd have to say, do you really want to live in a country where these sorts of cables can't be published? Well, we might be shortly by the sound of things. But I think the overwhelming thing is about these comments that are judgments or interpretations of diplomatic discussion. I think the overwhelming quote that has come to me out of all of these 250,000 documents is the Qatari line on the Iranians. They lie to us and we lie to them. So quite where you find truth in these documents, I don't know, beyond those very factual documents, which I think have deep ramifications, the credit card details and biometric data of UN officials up to Ban Ki-moon. And, when you're trying to be an honest broker in the Middle East, like the United States, obtaining registration details and the planned routes and vehicle movements of Hamas leaders. These are things that have serious ramifications.
And Jess, those cables about UN officials and spying on them, trying to get biometric data, they were under the name of Hillary Clinton. Another interesting cable under the name of Hillary Clinton was asking whether the Argentinian president was taking her meds or not.
That's right. Hillary asked US diplomats to look into Cristina Kirchner, the Argentinian president, and whether she was suffering from stress and whether she was up to the job. So they wanted to find out if she was on anxiety medication, which is an interesting one.
Pete, what do you make of all of this?
I just think that for all of those who deal in idle chatter and thought our career was in the media, maybe we should have all entered the diplomatic course. So, what strikes me is that 21st century diplomacy is still about cables. I don't know if they're actual cables or just bitchy email. But it also strikes me now it's all public. They may as well move intelligence onto Facebook. You could friend and unfriend nations. You could change your relationship and, it'd all be out there for the public. So, seriously, I think the interesting thing is that all the focus is on Julian Assange, who is the guy at the front of WikiLeaks, and less attention is on the leakers. And, without the leakers, it would just be another wiki.
Well, on that point, the secret internet protocol network, which is where all these cables have come from, it was revealed that since 2001, over 2 million people have access to that database. So how secret are these secrets?
Yeah. I know, and again, intelligence, it's people's views, it gets distilled, it forms national policy. Are the world leaders being too precious about their information? Are we finally seeing how sausages are made?
Tim, Hillary Clinton has been saying that it's an attack on American foreign policy interests, that it's an attack on the international community. How damaging is it for the US?
I think it's damaging to their credibility, obviously, in terms of their secrecy, for a start, and this incredible revision they're going to have of their secrecy provisions, where you'll now have to have 2 people signed in to move a document from a highly secured area to a less secure area. I don't know, I think they managed to overcome that at the Roads and Traffic Authority. But nonetheless, but I think more broadly, there are grave concerns about how the discussions of Iran in particular, I think, are out there now, about the credibility of being able to have partners in the Middle East on that, because I think what's clearly emerged is they have got an enormous chorus of support from all of the Gulf states, and yet we know that were such an attack to take place, none of them would publicly support the United States, and that puts those states in suddenly a very different and new diplomatic position for what is commonly known as the street in the Middle East and how they interpret their rulers across the Gulf. So that does have big implications. So when Hillary Clinton is facing this possibly in the next 12 months and the ramifications of a response war between Lebanon and Israel again, this talks directly to her Middle East partners and allies.
Jess, what about the pressure now on Julian Assange? I mean, there was a Republican Senator, Peter King, who's come out and said that he should be prosecuted for espionage, but he thinks that WikiLeaks should actually be described as a terrorist organisation in the US.
Yeah, it really challenges the way we think about whistleblowing, because if you think about whistleblowing, what the protections for whistleblowers are really about is, we know you're breaking the rules, but it's for the public interest. So the question with this is, what's the public interest being served? We don't know. There's so many documents that no one's had a chance to go through them yet. So it brings up these really interesting questions about what protections do we put in place for people who are going out there to expose wrongdoing, and does this conform to normal whistleblowing criteria?
And Peter, it seems like Robert McClellan, the Australian Attorney-General, doesn't think they're in the public interest. He's saying that there could be ways that the media here would encourage not to actually publish these leaks. It's hard to believe that could actually happen.
Yeah, it does seem like the security establishment is feeling under incredible threat. Their information is out there. We don't know what that really means because we haven't gone through the 250,000 files, and I presume most of the stuff coming to public is the salacious stuff. But, the government's in a tough situation because for the first time, a new enabling technology is putting it all out there. This is the new world. I don't think this will be the last leak either.
And Tim, one of the revelations is about Australia, about our status in the eyes of the US, and it said that we're rock solid but uninfluential. Now, I thought we were punching above our weight. Haven't we been told that for years?
I think we're the equivalent of the Oceania vote at FIFA. So, look, I mean, but it does interest me, the language of the government. The idea of governments delisting things goes to the heart of what's different about WikiLeaks and what many people now call the mainstream media, that we've been complicit with governments for too long on things like delist, that we've entered into this club arrangement, and that there should be more openness of this nature and more leaks of this nature. The argument against that is nothing to be private.
And there's more to come, isn't there? Julian Assange, they're not only leaking more information from these cables, but it seems like the banks are next.
That'll take the heat off the government, won't they, if it was the Westpac? But clearly the speculation is it could be Morgan Stanley or...
But the interesting point is that this technology is an enabler. Like it or not, organisations who have built their empires on secrecy are going to be challenged. It is the state, it is big corporations. You don't need to say it is a good or a bad thing, but it is a thing that is here, and every organisation will be starting to look internally at what are those, infrastructure of secrecy that holds them up.
Well, let's look at another big organisation with a few scandals swirling above it, and the timing couldn't be worse for FIFA, just 3 days before the final vote on who'll host the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. Soccer's governing body has been hit by yet another corruption scandal. 3 FIFA executives, Ricardo Teixeira of Brazil, Paraguay's Nicolas Leoz, and African football head Isa Hayatu, have been accused by the BBC's Panorama programme of taking bribes from a sports marketing firm.
Can I ask you how much? Please don't do that.
Jack Warner is one of FIFA's untouchables. He's always ignored Panorama's questions, but he told the press our allegations were a rehash of the same old bullshit and that he continues to sleep very soundly at night. David Beckham's already met him. This week, David Cameron hopes to, in Zurich, to discuss England's bid. Back home, no one wants to talk about the issues we're raising. The boss of South American football was alleged to have taken 2 bribes totaling $130,000. You might have expected President Blatter to order an immediate investigation. He didn't. Thanks to this secret list of payments we've obtained, never revealed in open court, we can see that Mr. Leo's got a great deal more.
Jennings has been annoying sports officials for years now in FIFA and the IOC, and I guess the big document he got his hands on was from 2001, a document when the then marketing firm associated with FIFA seems to have been giving bribes to FIFA executives.
Payments of some sort that weren't declared, and while he talks about 130,000 there in one case to one of the executives named, the figures are big. It's $100 million, the total number of payments made on that list. Obviously, the English camp in particular are worried about the timing, calling this unpatriotic, as they were at one stage front runners for the 2018 World Cup before Russia took that over. But I think, FIFA really does. I mean, you mentioned Jennings, it does sound almost exactly like the model of one Antonio Samaranch. There have been claims that the Blatter regime is not much different to Samaranch's IOC. Although Blatter has a lot more confidence from people himself, but certainly on the periphery, people who have direct involvement in votes and people who have direct involvement in being able to channel assets like tickets clearly have been. And I don't think.
Well, you mentioned tickets there, because Jack Warner, who Andrew Jennings was stalking in that piece of footage we just saw then, he's accused also in that story of actually buying a whole lot of tickets off FIFA and then selling them on the black market at triple the rate and pocketing it.
And, hardly surprising when if you stand outside Highbury Stadium or now Emirates Stadium or any of the other stadiums in London, you can buy tickets that come from the players and the staff at hugely inflated prices before any Premier League match. This is part of the culture of football, unfortunately, and I think if you're living in the West Indies and you've got one of these jobs,